Welcome to the 31st Middlesex District debate. My name is Anthony Shanella, editor of the Winchester Star. On my right is Stephen Hagan, editor of the Stoneham Sun. Originally, this evening was supposed to be a debate between the incumbent state representative, who represents Winchester and Stoneham, and his Republican challenger, John Prindiville. Unfortunately, the planned and promoted debate Unfortunately, because of the planned and promoted debate, the incumbent decided not to show up. Over the next half hour, the editors of Community Newspaper Company will have an interview with the Republican candidate and allow him the same format that we had originally planned for the original debate. To my left is John Prindiville. He is the Republican candidate for state representative. He is from Stoneham. He will be allowed a 2-minute opening statement.
First of all, I would like to begin by thanking Anthony Shanella and Stephen Hagan and the people here at WinCam Studios for hosting this debate or interview, I guess. My name is John Prindiville, and I'm running for state representative in Stoneham and Winchester. On a personal note, I grew up in Linfield, where I attended Linfield High School, went to Suffolk University in Boston, and studied political science and philosophy while I was there. Upon graduation, I chose to move to Stoneham, where I currently live and run my small business. I am running for state representative because I know that I can represent the people of Stoneham and Winchester better than my opponent has over the past 16 years. Today you will see a clear difference of approach on government reform, taxation, and accountability between Paul Casey and me. Concerning government reform, I am for common sense reform over raising your taxes. One of the governor's proposed reforms that I agree with is merging the Turnpike Authority with Mass Highway. My opponent lobbied and voted against this reform. By getting rid of wasteful government spending, we can invest more money back into local aid and take some tax burden off our citizens. In regard to taxation, I will be the representative that protects your pocketbook because I believe the chairman of taxation, my opponent, Paul Casey, has been spending your money without your permission. Finally, we must have a representative who respects the will of the people. In the recent past, we have had many ballot initiatives where the people of Stoneham and Winchester have voted one way, and my opponent, and their representative, Paul Casey, has voted with the Finneran leadership team in the opposite direction. Paul Casey has ignored the voters' will on mandating rollback of the income tax, on implementing clean election laws, and English immersion in our schools as opposed to bilingual education. I, John Prindiville, ask for your support in the upcoming election so we can have true reform on Beacon Hill and bring back responsive representation to the people of Stoneham and Winchester. Thank you very much.
Under 2 minutes. Stephen Hagan will start with the first question.
John, the big buzz this week on the State House has been the departure of Tom Finneran and the elevation of Representative Sal DeMasi as the new Speaker of the House. I wonder how that might impact your plans and your initiatives that you plan to push forward on Beacon Hill.
From my understanding, DeMasi is further to the left than Finneran was to begin with. But I imagine that the mantra of running against patronage politics as usual on Beacon Hill is still implemented by the governor and his candidates who are running for state representative and state senate. Especially the fact that this whole decision was decided behind closed doors in an apartment in the North End rather than in an open forum and kind of an open election and a debate between who would take over leadership of Beacon Hill. And the numbers still remain the same. I mean, there's 160 House seats, only 22 are held by the opposition party. There's 40 Senate seats, only 7 are held by the opposition party. There's a one-party system in the state, and the governor is fighting to actually give it a little bit more balance to the legislature, and that's why we're out here trying to do this.
About that party distinction, about so many more Democrats on Beacon Hill than Republicans like yourself. Obviously, that's the biggest challenge of any Republican candidate or politician up there. How do you work with the leadership on Beacon Hill when you are, in fact,
The minority.
in the minority party?
Again, there's 131 candidates running for these seats right now. I know that DeMasi thinks he's going to beat us back, but I don't think that's the reality. I think that we're going to gain a lot of more seats than we've ever had before. I think we're going to gain back the veto, which the governor needs, because we really need to make sure that the governor, who's accountable to all the electorate, has the most power in the state, not the Speaker of the House. And the reality right now is that the Speaker of the House has infinitely more power than the governor, and he's only responsible to, it was a small gerrymandered district in Mattapan, now it's a small district in the North End. Either way, I think someone who's voted by all the people should have more power than the Speaker of the House, personally.
I'd like to stick with the tax issue. You've made the legislature's failure to roll back the income tax to 5% as they promised to do as one of your big campaign platforms. The incumbent recently pointed to 62 other taxes in the legislature that the legislature's tinkered with. Why is the rollback more important than, say, raising the housing deduction or cutting taxes on dividends?
I mean, Paul can talk about all the minor little tax cuts he's done over the past, but nobody in Stoneham and Winchester believes they're paying less in overall taxes over the last 16 years that he's been in office. When he first took office back in 1989, they had a temporary tax increase that was sold to the voters. This temporary tax increase was supposed to be rolled back. It was supposed to be due to a fiscal crisis. During the booming 90s, they didn't roll back the income tax. During 2000, when the voters in a ballot initiative mandated that they roll back the income tax, they still didn't roll back the income tax. They're not going to roll back the income tax now. I already asked him. He's not going to do it. What they're really trying to tell the voters is they're never going to roll back the income tax. And again, this is a promise made, a promise kept. And in terms of other taxes, we're paying more in property taxes than we ever have before. And a lot of people in Winchester and Stoneham feel like they're getting taxed right out of their community. That's why we have to constantly deal with these override elections where people are getting forced with increased property taxes.
And on the same platform as dealing with taxes, both Boston dailies have published stories about the fact that a lot of large corporations and banks don't pay more than $456 in state income tax, which is much less than residents of Stoneham and Winchester. It seems interesting that the legislature has failed to tinker with this tax. Do you have any comment on the fact that banks and corporations pay less state income tax than the residents of Stoneham and Winchester?
Again, this is something that Paul pushes forward as one of the positive taxes that he's actually, tax cuts that he's implemented. But you know what, that doesn't affect the people who vote every day and who live in the Stoneham and Winchester. The income tax is the most universal tax that everybody pays. And the fact that he's cutting corporate taxes doesn't really help the majority of individuals within the Commonwealth and within this district.
Stephen, another question?
Yeah, John, taxes, the budget, money issues up on Beacon Hill. Besides those issues, what do you see as the biggest issue of this campaign?
We're for reform over raising your taxes. And again, the biggest issue in this campaign is doing smart fiscal planning so we can have more effective use of the money on Beacon Hill. I always said it before, I'm in favor of merging the Mass Highway with the Turnpike Authority. We have two giant state agencies managing one set of highways. Conservatively, if we were to merge these two entities together, we would save the taxpayers a one-time savings of $200 million and $20 million each additional year thereafter in administrative costs. I mean, that's $20 million for life. So every year that we don't merge these two entities together, we're wasting money. We also, I think our priorities are screwed up on this incident. We're spending more on toll workers than we are on teachers in Stoneham and Winchester. I know that I saw a story in both your papers recently about the fact that $70,000 is going to a toll worker and $48,000 in Stoneham and $55,000 in Winchester are going to the teachers of these communities. I think we have to get our priorities right, recognize that patronage jobs shouldn't be our high priority, local aid should be.
Follow up, Stephen?
Yes, you're a Republican. You obviously support the governor, Governor Mitt Romney, and with his tax cuts or attempt to lower taxes and consolidate agencies on Beacon Hill. How would you respond to people who say our services are being cut beyond what is acceptable? You know, there are human services that are being laid by the wayside. What's your response to that?
Human services should be a high priority. If I was elected state representative, absolutely. It's a matter of priorities. I don't think wasteful government agencies should be a priority. And if we merge these agencies, we save our taxpayers money. I think another big bureaucracy is the municipal courts in Boston. We spend more on the courts in Boston than we do in all the courts in the state combined, yet they have about the same traffic as the Springfield District Court system. We continue to fund these giant municipal courts at the same time that we're cutting local aid. And that's where people really feel it the most, is when it's local aid to their communities where they don't have enough money to fund their after-school programs or their music programs, or even just a janitor for the senior center in Stoneham. That's where I think the priorities are messed up.
I'd like to talk to you. This is your first time running for office?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You currently work in the private sector.
Yep.
Why would this make you more, or I should say, why would this make you a better legislator than somebody who's been there for 16 years?
Well, the majority of businesses in the district and around this Commonwealth are small businesses. Everybody knows that. I'm a small business owner. I know how to run my own small business, and I have a better understanding of how hard it is to actually run a small business and the trials and tribulations of doing that. And I think it gives me a unique perspective on, where we can help them out, in terms of relieving tax burden, and where we can help them out in terms of finding a way for health insurance to be able to be covered through some form of a collective bargaining like the Chamber of Commerce does.
Mm-hmm. You've been attacked because you're 25 years old running for the seat. It should be noted I did some looking into the archives of the Winchester Star. Paul Casey first ran for the legislature when he was 25 in 1986 against a longtime incumbent, Whip Saltmarsh, here in town. He, at that time, said he would serve no more than 8 years, and also likened the role of a legislature to Cincinnatus, the Roman citizen, who helped out in the war and then decided to go back to his plowshares after the war. Will you make a commitment right now to limit your terms and stick with that commitment? And what do you think about the fact that you've been attacked for being a young candidate?
Again, I'm the same age as Paul when he first ran, and in terms of term limits, I'm a proponent of it. In the state of Maine, you can serve 3 consecutive terms, 6 years, and then you step down. You can always come back a term later if you're that vital to the Commonwealth, I guess. I just think it's kind of amazing that when he first ran for state representative, he said he would only serve no more than 8 years. If he gets elected this time, he'll be in there for 18 years. That's 10 years longer than he promised he would serve. And the quote about Cincinnatus, a Roman citizen who dropped his plow to lead troops and then returned to his plow despite being offered the crown. I think Paul was offered the crown and he took it. So I'm in favor of term limits. I will serve no more than 6 years, and if there was something like a term pledge organization where I would sign it, I would sign it today.
Stephen?
John, hardcore Democrats will vote for Casey, hardcore Republicans for you. What do you say to those people on the fence that when they make up their mind to go into the voting booth, why should they vote for you and send you to Beacon Hill?
Again, we've had the same representative for over 16 years. He's voted against their interests on key issues like English immersion, rolling back the income tax, English immersion over bilingual education, and clean elections. You want a representative that actually represents your wishes. So when you go to cast a vote in the ballot initiative, you expect your representative to actually enact that. Paul hasn't done that. I don't imagine he'll be doing it in the future. Do we need to continue to have a person who doesn't truly represent the people of this district, or do we want a fresh new face who believes in reform and is willing to enact it?
Regarding the idea of constituent response,
Yeah.
You say your office, your office on Beacon Hill will respond. How do you specifically plan to do that?
When they vote on a ballot initiative in my district, I will uphold their will.
No, I'm talking about the voters, the people of your both towns, your district. How will you respond to the demands and the wishes of the voters when they call your office asking for favors?
Constituent services are very important, and we should continue to do that to the best of our ability. But at the same time, I'm not for patronage jobs or anything like that, so I don't think people should be voting for me to get a political job, if that's what you're asking.
Well, not exactly. I'm
Right.
just wondering how you'll respond when a senior citizen calls and says she has a problem with a sewer line in front of her house.
Mm-hmm.
How would you respond to the voters specifically?
Again, if a constituent, if I was elected and a constituent asked me questions, I would respond to them depending on whatever the question is and try to help them in any manner I could, whether it be me going down there in person or directing them to the person that actually handles that particular problem. Because constituent services is a high priority regardless of what the question may be. Maybe if it's not even in my realm, I can direct them to the people that handle Social Security or anything to that effect. So again, you're there to serve the people. You're running to be a state representative. You want to be a public servant, not a politician. That's why I'm taking the term limits pledge, because I do not want to be a career politician. I do not want to be up in elected office forever.
I'd like to get back to the state budget for just a moment, which
Yeah.
is an issue in every campaign for state representative, state senate, and and anybody with a state race. Your opponent believes that the state has a fiscal crisis. You've said that there's been a spending crisis, and you've also divulged a couple of reform ideas. But go beyond those reform ideas for a second. Can you name 3 other specific things you would like to address to deal with the budget issues that would deal with the spending crisis? In your words, there is a spending crisis, not a fiscal crisis.
I've always said it was a spending crisis. Again, we have to make the state one of the states where people want to do business in. So we need to give incentives for businesses to do capital projects in here, invest in the communities, invest in education of their workers. The businesses and corporations that do this should be having tax incentives for those purposes. You want to make the climate comfortable for people to be able to afford to live and work in this community. We have some of the best educational institutions in the world. People come from all over the world to travel and study in Boston, Massachusetts, and around the city. What we need to do is keep those qualified people within our districts. One of the good things that the governor's proposed, I know it's kind of slightly off the topic, is education, and actually having the top students in the MCAS scores be able to go to UMass for free. The top 25%, the top 10% go over to UMass for free with $2,000 stipend. I think it's good that we have the best of our communities, stay in our communities, love our communities, and grow in our communities. And again, those are my priorities.
Mm-hmm. Do you have another question?
I do.
Have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
I don't have a follow-up on the budget.
No, I don't have a follow-up on that
Okay,
question at all.
go ahead.
Moving more broader, with so much of business in the country and in Massachusetts being outsourced, companies moving out of the state, out of the country, especially what industrial business is left in the state, what can you do to help encourage business to stay right here in Massachusetts?
That's an interesting question. The Associated Industries of Massachusetts, the AIM, gave my opponent a D rating on his legislative report card in terms of giving businesses incentives to stay in here. And these are labor jobs, blue collar jobs, where people who live in Stoneham and Winchester work and have want to continue to work, continue doing their jobs. We have to really promote education. Again, we have to have the best engineers in the state. We have to have the best engineers in the nation coming out of our public school systems into our graduate school systems and staying in the state for us to truly be competitive. That's why I'm a proponent of charter schools, especially when math and science, where we can better educate our children. The smarter our children are, they're going to stay in the country, or they're going to be able to complete at a global level.
If I could follow up,
Sure.
I just wonder, again, what you specifically plan to do to help encourage business to stay in Massachusetts.
Again, I'm going to take this from 50,000 feet and do it more philosophically than an actual direct answer to that. I believe the more comfortable a climate it is for businesses in the state, the better off we'll do. Rolling back the income tax so that businesses can locate here and not worry about their people having trouble affording to live here is an important part of that. There should be tax incentives for businesses that are actually going to invest into these communities, such as capital tax investments, that they're going to invest in, and also in education. If they're going to invest in education for the people that are working within their particular businesses, we should give them tax incentives for those reasons.
Over the years, your opponent has been known to take large contributions from both labor and business political action committees, including AIM, even though he received a D rating for them. He got a PAC contributions from them. He's also taken money from corporate lobbyists such as who represent Fidelity, Verizon, Raytheon, insurance companies, and others that have benefited from tax breaks that the legislature refuses to reform. Do you believe that these donations have an effect on the opponent, and can you explain any PAC donations you've taken and how any of those donations will influence you if you are elected?
I've taken one PAC donation. It's from the Citizens for Limited Taxation. It represents, I believe, all the taxpayers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's why I have no problem taking it.
How much was it?
It was for $500 last year and $500 this year, so $1,000 altogether. The majority of my money came from inside the district. I raised it from people in Stoneham and Winchester who wanted to see a change in the Commonwealth. I know that 1/3 of my opponent's money came from PACs and lobbyists, and 1/3 of his money came from outside the district. I think his interests are skewed just with the fact that this much influence is coming from outside the district trying to influence him. The people who want me into office are the people who live in this district who want to see change and reform, and my immediate family and the Citizens for Limited Taxation. And I think all those organizations, people who live in the district, my family, who obviously will always support me, and the Citizens for Limited Taxation are organizations and people that have a real influence and a say in the quality of the Commonwealth.
Mhm. Another question, Stephen?
Yes, I do. Regarding budget planning, I know we talked about taxation a little while ago, but do you feel that budget planning, from what you've seen of it on the Hill right now, is it headed in the right direction? Are we moving toward prudent fiscal planning or no?
We have to deal with pension reform in a big way, and that's another thing that's something that's on the horizon that people aren't dealing with right now. Not even the governor's proposed anything on pension reform. We gotta close the loopholes where people like Cheryl Jakes can work for one day and get a whole year's worth of pension. We gotta close the loopholes where people who work part-time as maybe a selectman for 15, 20 years and then work, get a full-time job taking $50,000 a year, get prorated for their top 3 years as opposed to the 16 years they were making next to nothing. So pension reform is really the thing that's looming on the horizon. Also, insurance reform has to go underway. We have 19 insurance companies that do business in Massachusetts. I believe Commerce Insurance takes up 28% of the actual total insurance business in the state of Massachusetts. It's kind of been a monopoly, and it's unfortunate that good drivers are subsidizing bad drivers in the Commonwealth. We're in the only state where we have commercials for Geico, yet we can't actually take Geico. So I think these are two reforms that need to come in place to help handle the budget in the upcoming future.
Just a quick question follow-up. You're talking about pension reform and insurance reform and all the other issues you talked about before tonight. Of all of these issues that are to be considered by you and Casey, which do you feel is the one that you feel most passionate about, that you'd like to really work with on the Hill if you become elected?
Okay, first of all, one of my first things would be to roll back the income tax. I really believe that a promise made is a promise, Captain, and I would keep the promise that the legislature made in 1989 for a temporary tax increase. The merging the Mass Highway with the Turnpike Authority is just something that has to be done. Every year that we don't do it, we're wasting $20 million. $20 million that could be invested into our communities in the form of local aid. So that's a real high priority for me. Plus, there's no need to have wasteful duplicate agencies, and there's no need to funnel more money into toll collectors than we have funneling over to our own public school teachers. So again, those are probably the two top priorities for me if I were to be elected.
I'd like to get back to this is your first political run, and we know that you work in the private sector.
Yeah.
Can you talk about any cultural, political organizations or church organizations that you belong to? Anything you do for fundraising or as volunteerism or anything like that?
Okay. Originally, I grew up in Linfield, and I was always part of International Family Church, which is located in Winchester right now. I just recently joined the Friends of the Fells. I'm on the Chamber of Commerce in Stoneham. I also I own an art fundraising business called Art Events, and we do art fundraising shows for nursing homes, hospitals, and universities, and for instance, the YMCAs and stuff like that, where we use reproduction artwork to raise money for nonprofits. So those are the organizations that I'm involved with.
I had a short term myself, not as a politician, but as a staff member on Beacon Hill.
Yeah.
And I learned that most of the work that takes place in most of those offices is constituent services.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to spend the hours, the time,
Absolutely.
the weekends, the holidays, being in this community in Stoneham and Winchester, responding to the residents?
Again, I'm not married. I don't have kids as of yet, so I really have. This is what I'm committing my life to as a public servant. Again, a temporary public servant, because I don't think I could keep it up forever. So I'm absolutely committed to spending the time in the communities, dealing with constituent services. I also worked on Beacon Hill for Representative John Clem a long time ago as an intern, and I understand that constituent services is about 90% of it, and how people are constantly calling up. But that's a very important part of the job. But another important part of the job is voting in the interest of the people you're actually representing, not just playing them lip service on constituent services. And that's where it's important that we have a representative that's actually representing the community he's supposed to be representing. So,
follow up?
No.
Okay. One of the issues here in Winchester has been the failed override. It caused the layoff of 5 part-time elementary school librarians, as well as some part-time phys ed teachers and art teachers on the school system. It also, the failed override kept 4 DPW workers from being employed that were supposedly needed. And I'm not saying they weren't or not, I'm just saying that they were asked for. The incumbent representative has been in the leadership and has been in Beacon Hill for 16 years. During the financial crisis here in Winchester, he was unable to score a lot of the money that was needed, even though he's in a leadership position. If by some miracle the Republicans take control of the legislature, what will you do exactly to make the budget situation here in Winchester that is based on property taxes better?
First of all, let me answer this question in 2 parts. One of the ways we shouldn't do it is by having a transfer tax, a 2% transfer tax, which has been on the table. What you're doing is you're taxing seniors out of your community by doing these overrides to begin with. And I know Tip O'Neill, I'm quoting a Democrat, but his favorite quote was, "The quality of a community is based solely on how we treat our seniors." So if we can keep on taxing property in the form of property tax, seniors and fixed incomes, they're going to be forced to move out of this community. There's going to be more young people moving in, more burden on the school systems as it is. That being said, we need to have priorities, and our priorities should be local aid to the communities, not waste and patronage on Beacon Hill. I've given you plenty of examples of where I feel there is waste and patronage that shouldn't exist. The ABCC is another example of this. The Alcohol Beverage and Control Commission was eliminated by the governor when he first got into office. Basically, Casey, Finneran, and the gang over in Beacon Hill took all those patronage jobs away from the governor, put it under the treasurer, and fully funded it all over again. If that's his idea of reform, that's not the kind of reform that I think the majority of these people want.
Do you have another question?
Yes, I do.
Make it a short one.
Sure. Quickly, the former Boston Regional Medical Center in Stoneham, which is now closed. The town and a developer are considering developing it for a mixed-use facility. You may be aware of this, both commercial and residential. I wonder if you have plans to become involved in that planning process.
Again, I'm a recent member of the Friends of the Fells. I'm very concerned about that project and seeing that it does not expand into the Fells Way, because once you expand into these beautiful natural preserves, you can never take them back. We have to realize what's best for the community of Stoneham, and I don't think it's considered smart growth to build a community out in the middle of nowhere. The original plan of smart growth was to build above our business districts so we could revitalize our business districts and have some form of public transportation into the city and out of the city. The hospital project doesn't meet any of those qualifications, in my opinion.
So you support the governor's initiative to build housing near T-stops and things like that?
I mean, absolutely. It revitalizes local communities, and especially business districts where the local businesses are kind of hurting.
Okay. That's the end of our question round. John has 2 minutes for a closing statement, and would like to give you the opportunity to make those statements at this time.
Thank you very much. I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm running for state representative because I believe I can give true change on Beacon Hill. My opponent's been there for 16 years. He promised to be there 8 years. I don't know where that promise went. He's voted against reform on all major issues like merging the Mass Highway with the Turnpike Authority. He has not voted in your interest on rolling back the income tax, on clean elections, on English immersion over bilingual education. I think it's time for a change, and I believe I'm the candidate to do that. I want your support. I need your support. I hope you'll find my candidacy worthy of your support. Thank you very much for hosting this great debate.
Thank you. We'd like to thank Winchester Community Access and Media Incorporated for hosting this debate. I'd also like to thank my colleague Stephen Hagan for being on board from the Stoneham Sun. My name's Anthony Schnella, editor of the Winchester Star. Thank you for being with us.